Hi guys, so I'm doing something a little different today. I'm covering whether or not dinosaurs could work in DVD. One of the things that I feel like was going on with the anniversary streams, people were talking about licenses that could or couldn't be coming. Most people were talking about like Pennywise and Slenderman and a bunch of other things. Predator, I think I saw mentioned. But occasionally dinosaurs have been brought up. Now obviously the biggest one is a velociraptor, or I guess if you're going to be more scientific, it'd be a different type of raptor, because velociraptors are actually tiny. But the dinosaur I'm going to be talking about is Compsognathus, and this would be a swarm-based killer. So we're going to be combining essentially like an infection-type killer with someone who uses AI, like NPCs, I guess would be a better way to call it, like Night. So as I said, swarm-based, you're going to be able to build up something called Hunted, which will let you damage later on, and you're going to have AI companions all around the map. You're going to have NPCs that patrol and that you can give commands to, in a way, as a Compsagnathus. It'll be a swarm-based killer, which means you need to have your NPCs, your AI companions, to gather information, apply Hunted, and get early hits. The main Compsognathus, so the actual killer yourself, is not capable of damaging survivors unless they have 100% hunted status. These NPCs will kind of work like Nemesis in that they'll randomly roam the map. You'll have maybe about 4 of them on the map, but like Houndmaster or like Knight, you'll be able to set paths and set pounces. So you could tap into one, see that there's a survivor, and order a pounce. Like Victor, AI compies can be crushed, and when that happens, if a compy is crushed, you gain a negative effect. You gain negative stacks of Retaliate. And what that will do is the more that your swarm is kind of killed off, you'll get slower vault speeds, which is going to be very important because this will be the first killer that cannot break pallets. You will not be breaking pallets, you will be vaulting at like medium speed to survivor speed vaults. So this will be a very interesting thing, that in order to counteract some of the killer power, healing is going to be huge, actually kicking and crushing companions. There will also be a stealth aspect because these AI companions will have a cone of detection, so if you're sneaking and healthy, you'll be able to just crush them without any kind of drawback. So, as I said, it'll patrol, it will be manually directed, you can direct them to pounce on people, 4 of them will spawn in a trial. An NPC compy cannot down survivors, they can only injure healthy ones. If they do pounce and injure, they do the hunted effect, which, you know, kind of like Plague's infection or Wesker's infection. It builds, but the entire time you have it, it's applying hemorrhage, it's applying mangled, it's doing the bloodhound effect, so blood is easier to see, lasts longer, and killer instinct when they're pounced on. So if you get pounced on by one of the compies around the map, the main killer will be notified. All of these effects are there to kind of help with tracking. So this is very much a tracking type killer that is working with other NPCs on the map. This is swarm based. This status, the hunted, it lasts until the survivor is healed or swarm/hooked. Instead of hooking, because compies are really small and dinosaurs don't hook, they're going to do something very unique, which is kind of like a pyramid head cage, where they will essentially hook in place. So wherever that person is downed, that is where they are hooked or swarmed. So as I said, the companions will deal 100% hunted. They will injure when they're pounced onto a survivor in their detection cone. If they're if they're already injured, they do not down. So NPCs will not be able to down survivors at all. It has to be the main compy. And if you can crush them, Retaliate will kick in. Retaliate will slow the killer vault speed. So this will make them slow vault time, which would be like a normal killer vault time. And it will also, I guess, increase the amount of time it takes to fully swarm a survivor. So I said slow swarming time, but what I mean is it increases it so that a survivor could potentially stun you out of a swarm. Swarms can be stunned out of if there's a pallet or if there's a flashlight or something. It would be very, very difficult, especially if you or that survivor that you're trying to swarm is blocking a pallet. When a generator is completed, retaliate stacks are completely removed. As for the abilities, the main killer ability will apply Hunted when attacking with M1. It does not apply at 100% the first time you hit. You have to do multiple hits with an M1 to apply 100%. You cannot injure with your M1 until you have someone at 100% Hunted. Landing an M2, which is a pounce from your main compy, will deal 100% Hunted and injure a survivor. Vaulting over windows and pallets as fast as medium vault by survivors, at the very least. This would be a very unique thing because they don't break pallets at all. They just vault and vault and vault. So they need to have at least a little bit of time to keep up and not, get constantly run at what would essentially become like god pallets, god windows, because they can't break them. So that's where Retaliate comes in. Retaliate is to slow compies. So if you don't want the main vaulting at these speeds, you need to be crushing their companions. They'll also have a special ability mode. So you use special ability button, use mouse 1 or mouse 2 to select which one you're using. Call to Swarm will let any survivor near any type of compy, even the main compy, will gain Hunted at 100% and broken for 15 seconds. Swarm Tactics is what will let you select a compy around the map to kind of look around, to maybe set a patrol route, or to pounce on specific survivors like Houndmaster. As I mentioned before, compies will swarm, they do not hook. So while hooks will still spawn on maps and stuff as they generally would, they don't hook. Instead, if you go over to a survivor and you press space bar on a down survivor, the animation of a bunch of compies coming in and swarming over them and them trying to fend it off, that's what will play. And the survivor will essentially be hooked where they are. They will be in that animation, stuck in that animation, going through what would be a hook phase in that spot, and they would need another survivor to come free them. Like regular hooks, there'd be 2 phases, with the third being an activation into a Mori. So if they already have 2 hooks, 2 swarm states, then it would just Mori on the next one. So, I guess you could do, special Moris if you wanted to. So you could have maybe 2 different Moris, where maybe one of them is, what would essentially be, a third hook death animation, but you get, a very special one or something if you're somehow getting them out of the game beforehand. I don't know. I think really just, you could do maybe, special Moris. I don't think there's a reason to, because I think this is already pretty crazy enough. Swarmed survivors will act as a individual, an object on the map. So if you go through and you try to pick them up, you try to whatever, they can block pallets and vaults. And it will take some time to swarm a survivor, which is why you'd be able to pallet stun, obviously. So the time it would take to pick up a survivor is the time it would take to swarm a survivor. So that would give you time for, essentially pallet save, flashlight save. I suppose if you wanted to, you could make certain perks apply to this state. So the swarm time could be applied with fire up, as an example. You could do scourge hooks would apply to the swarm phase. As for maps, you'd have something very unique, which is essentially certain tiles and stuff would be enclosure tiles. They'd be fences, they'd be trees falling down into the enclosure, there'd be vault spaces, just open areas of the fences. So obviously this is an AI image. All of these are AI images, so this is not exactly what the layout of a pallet gym would look like or any of these tiles, but you kind of get the general idea. There's a pallet on one side, there's some windows in there, there's some open areas of the map, of the tiles, where maybe like something broke through the fence or that kind of thing. You could do some of those log vaults that you see in like Swamp. So you could have like log vaults in the middle or something if you wanted to do T&Ls with these, stuff like that. And this would be an example of what I think a type of map with this type of chapter could be like. It would be like a jungle map where you'd have shack on one end. So if we have shack on the left, we'd have a warehouse maybe at the top for like storing goods. We'd have a lab somewhere down the bottom. And then I've included a small little marina area where like there'd be like a sailboat and you could get on the sailboat from, you know, one side of the dock area. And this is an example of what gin placement could potentially look like. The 3 black gins would be ones that are always guaranteed to spawn. So this way you'd have an interesting map layout, I think. And obviously, I feel like there are certain tiles that just don't really work well with this type of map. There are certain ones that I think would be totally fine. It would be a lot of rock, it would be a lot of tree pallets, that type of thing. But that's why I say we need like maybe a new unique tile, which would be enclosure tiles. Because the regular pallet gyms and stuff I don't think really fit a jungle dinosaur map type look and aesthetic. So that is essentially my idea for one type of dinosaur we could put in, which is actually a total wild card that I haven't seen anybody really talk about. And I guess it's because it's a very odd wild card. But some of these things that I've said could just as easily apply to Velociraptor or Utah Raptor or Deinonychus. Any of those are 3 different types of raptors. They're in the raptor family. Generally, when it comes to like Jurassic Park, Velociraptor is like the good name here, because as I said, they're really tiny. But the other 2 that I mentioned are about human size, if not taller. So they would be more like your Jurassic Park-sized raptors. And if we're using the scientific names, then we don't necessarily need a Jurassic Park license. We could just have it as its own chapter. As I said, this would be a very unique killer chapter, because this would be a killer that does not hook. They would essentially hook in place. They don't carry anybody anywhere. If you're doing the larger ones, if you're doing larger raptors, they could maybe like drag and you just reskin hooks to be like burrows or dens or nests. So the animation of them being hooked is essentially, so the carry animation would be them being dragged, and the hook animation would essentially be like them getting swarmed by like maybe baby raptors or something. I think that would be a decent way to do it, because then you're like, oh yeah, you know, Mama Raptor is hunting and bringing people back for her babies, and, you know, the babies are the hook animation, so, like, it would make logical sense why this raptor just, like, can just wander off from the guy that, you know, like, that would make some sense, right? You know, go save your guy from the baby raptors, go save your teammates. So I feel like that is another way you could do hook animations. So if you're doing, like, actually like Velociraptor, even if you did have a Jurassic Park or a Jurassic World thing, like, you could do something like that. So if you had Jurassic Park Velociraptors, you could do, you know, is it the ones from Jurassic Park 3? You know what I'm talking about, where they steal the eggs? You could have, like, them as, like, a den animation of, like, all these raptors just come in, and so you have to go save them, and that's your hook phase animation. So I think that would be kind of cool. And then you just do third phase as, like, Amori, same as I mentioned earlier. So, yeah. So that's kind of my idea. know. You guys tell me if you think this is an interesting idea, if you think a dinosaur chapter would be scary, if you think it would work. I think there's a lot of possibility with Compsagnathus as this tiny swarm-based killer of just like cutting off, you know, that kind of thing. I think that could work. It would be very odd, it would be very difficult, I think, to integrate, just because it would be a lot of tweaks to existing mechanics, and there would be some balance stuff you need to figure out. I tried to pull in a little bit of balance with stuff like stacks of retaliate, right? The more compies you lose, the more you are weak. So, but it would be a whole different type of monster to balance, which might be really fun. See you guys later.